Welcome to the Tech Blog Writer Podcast, your guide to future tech trends and innovation in a language you understand. Now, over to your host, Neil Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Blog Writer Podcast, where I not only share how technology is transforming our lifestyle and multiple industries in the world of business, but also the inspirational stories that get leaders where they are today. I think this is so important because, for example, nobody cared when two people were watching Ed Sheeran busking in London years ago, or the hours of work that he put in with little or no reward. But many will now judge him on his success right here, right now. And this is why I want to share real stories of success and the hard work that goes into it, and how almost every person I interview on this show comes across a problem, and rather than just complain about it, thinks, I'm going to do something about this and build a solution for tomorrow. And what happens on that long journey, that's the real cool stuff. The bad news, of course, is that there is no such thing as overnight success. But it'd be no fun, would it, if everything was just handed to us on a silver platter? So today's guest is Mark Kilpatrick. He's the CPO of Urban FT. And they're on a mission that's focused around empowering the little guy in financial services. And this is where things get interesting, because it was inspired by Mark's childhood and him growing up in a small town. So Mark co-founded Urban FT with the goal in mind to build up these banks with the same mobile technology that behemoth banks gave their customers. So these guys work with Sprint, Boost Mobile, Sunrise Bank and a variety of major players in the banking credit union space. And they supply approximately 10% of all financial institutions in this space, with a current customer base of over 650 customers. But it's the story behind this payment startup, and empowering the underdogs in financial services is equally as inspiring as the company itself. So if you love technology and a good life story, buckle up and hold on tight as I beam your ears all the way to New York so we can speak with Mark Kilpatrick at Urban FT. So a massive warm welcome to the show. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Absolutely. Thanks, Neil. So my name's Mark Kilpatrick, and I am a New York City-based entrepreneur. I am currently working on what I would say is my first major and my longest project with a company called Urban FT. And Urban FT is one of the most progressive or becoming, I would say, one of the most progressive and successful FinTech companies in the financial services industry today. We've really been able to do that by enabling, and this really is our mission, by enabling small to medium-sized financial institutions to not just compete with, but in many times excel beyond what the much larger and more dominant institutions are doing here in the United States. Specifically with Urban FT, I am one of the co-founders and I am the chief product officer today. So my day-to-day does kind of bounce around. I do wear many hats and pretty much always have, but my primary focus has really driven into product strategy and driving that forward. A little bit of background on me. I am traditionally trained as a graphic designer, so it has been quite the road coming to New York, starting a business with two other founders and having that creative background. But I think that's played very heavily into my approach. Outside of Urban FT, I do quite a bit of things to keep myself busy. One of those such things is for my alma mater, Barry University. I actually run and set up the New York City alumni chapter. So I spend a lot of time on that, and I stay very connected to my university. I also run an adult soccer group here in the city. I played in college, love soccer. It's been a great way for me to really connect with the local New York City community, especially on Roosevelt Island, which is where we play most of the time. That group, and one of the very cool things that we've been able to do is to run a handful of charity events each year and raise money for some organizations that are in need. And, you know, in closing, it probably sounds like, and sometimes I feel this way, like I don't have a lot of personal time, but I do try to spend as much time as I can with family and friends and really just build experiences and have the best time that I can with those people that are closest to me.
I was going to say that you can't have much time for personal time there, but when you say you're the wearer of many hats, you really are, aren't you? Keep yourself busy.
I do, yeah. And, you know, I think there is a balance there that you have to find, and you do have to know when to shut off a little bit. And so that's something I'm working on learning, and I think I am getting better with that. But I do also think there's something to be said about staying busy and staying happy.
Absolutely. And you did mention a few moments ago about being a graphic designer, and that's where it all started. So before we dive into Urban FT, I want to take you back in time to where your journey began. So can you tell me a little bit about your journey from that graphic designer role to CPO where you are now? It sounds incredible.
Yeah, it certainly has been the journey. And, I think for me, it really goes back to, I grew up in a very small town based in Washington State. And my dream was always to play soccer professionally. And I think at some point in time for a lot of kids growing up playing sports, that's a dream that they have. And so that was really what drove me probably until the point that I reached my 20s. But I made a decision to attend college in Miami, Florida. And, spoiler alert, I have not succeeded in that professional pursuit, but I do and have found ways to enjoy soccer. But I think what really sticks out to me is that I went to college as a criminology major, and that blows my mind as well, and realized very quickly that wasn't for me. And from that point forward, I really bounced around to everything from kind of marketing to I think I had a stint in psychology, the psychology department, and none of that was for me either. So I had the fortune of being introduced to a very special individual who I'm still very close to today that was a native Spanish speaker, and he was intended to help me pass Spanish 1 in college, which I did, thankfully, but he also happened to be a graphic designer. And so towards the end of my freshman year, he exposed me to that. And it was, as a freshman in college who's there to play soccer, it's really, really hard to turn away large Apple computers and large plush chairs. It just blew my mind. That was something that you could go to university to actually do. So I did fall in love with that as well as the actual trade. I transitioned that major from criminology very early in my sophomore year. I think I entered my sophomore year as a graphic designer. And I graduated in 2011 with a BFA in graphic design. So that kind of left me, Neil, in a place where I had to figure out what I wanted to do with that. And I think very early on, I think I realized very early on that it wasn't just going to be doing graphic design day to day. And it's not because I don't love it. It's because I really had a desire to move more into the business side of things. I started a business very early on, just doing graphic design for a handful of different companies out there. But I was constantly seeking more. So very, very shortly after graduation, I made my way up to New York, where I met Casey Kaplan and Richard Stegel, the other two co-founders of Urban FT. And that's where things really started to transition for me. Very early on, I did a lot of hands-on graphic design work for the business. But that was really because, as I said, I've always worn a lot of hats. But that quickly transitioned into more of what I would say is kind of an all-encompassing business-driven role. So I've done everything from creative direction at Urban FT since we founded the business through to marketing, product. And obviously, as we discussed before, I've more specifically been focused on product direction and strategic expansion of that platform. But I have never lost sight of the fact that design is my background. It's something I'm very passionate about. And so I've made sure that we've been very design driven at Urban FT ever since that time. So even though the soccer career didn't pan out, I've had an exceptional time building this business from the ground up and having all of the experiences that I have. It's
a fantastic story. It really is. And I'm fascinated because if we all look back and join up the dots, I think it becomes quite easy and quite apparent just how our experiences and our choices actually map out our future for us. And this is something that truly fascinates me. So I've got to ask, how did growing up in a small town, which I believe was Stevenson, Washington, where there's approximately 1,500 residents, how did that inspire you when co-founding the business? A FinTech company that is the advocate for the little guy. Has that always stayed with you?
It certainly has. Have you ever heard of Stevenson, Washington, Neil?
I haven't, I'm afraid. It was when I was researching you, I'll be completely honest, that came up.
No, most people haven't. It certainly has. It stayed with me, and I think it's something that's always been a defining factor for me. Sometimes it's been a positive thing, and sometimes I think there's been an air of kind of negativity to it, depending on what angle it's coming from. But it really has defined me, whether it's been my pursuit of soccer and coming from a small town and trying to excel on that front, or if it was my choice to leave my hometown. Many people stayed in their hometown or near their hometown so they could visit. I mean, that's just generally a characteristic. And so my choice to go down to Miami for school and pursue soccer and to pursue a degree down in Miami was, it played into that. And then ultimately, I didn't go back after college. I came up to New York City and I worked on this exceptional project that's become Urban FT. So it definitely has stuck with me. In the cases where there's been either a kind of skepticism or negativity around it, I've really done my best, and I've tried to make a habit of putting those things behind me and using them to drive myself forward. And I think I've done a reasonable job with that, but it's one of those things where people can attach any sort of stereotype to you, but you've just got to find ways to make the most of it. So that's been a huge focus. I think if I look back at that experience, it's not something that I probably was super cognizant of when I was a kid. I think I actually took the entire experience growing up in such a wonderful area for granted. And it wasn't really until I came back to visit, I think after my first break from college, where I really had the first opportunity to reflect. And through the next 4 years, going to college and coming back and kind of having that transition back and forth between the big city of the big city of Miami, Florida, and the small town of Stevenson, Washington, I started to appreciate where I came from and also think about how that has helped to define me. So, you fast forward to 2012 and we're starting Urban FT, and the mission hasn't changed. The mission has always been to enable small to medium-sized banks and credit unions to excel and to make them successful in the digital landscape where they previously either didn't have the means to, didn't have the footprint, didn't have the access to be successful. So that hasn't changed over the last 6 years. And over that period of time, I've been able to reflect on my experiences from my hometown and look at the fact that I had community banks. I had small credit unions in my town. And in fact, one of the things that, sticks with me is that in 2007, when I left for Miami, I had a checking and savings account at Riverview Community Bank, which has a branch in Stevenson, Washington. And one of the first things we did, and I'll never forget this, is we went into Bank of America. My dad helped me sign up for a checking account. And although I kept that Riverview account for a while, I eventually closed it because it didn't provide the access to the digital experience. And quite frankly, it didn't give me immediate access to my parents' funds, which is really what I needed. And I needed the ability to really get access to that and have my dad send me money regularly. And it wasn't easy. So he'd make the 30-minute drive to the nearby town with a Bank of America in order to do that. So the thing that has driven me forward is grounded in that. And it is the fact that at that point in time, I made a decision to leave my community bank to go to Bank of America. And it kills me because had they had the digital experience, had they had easier money movement capabilities, had I been able to work with a shared ATM network or branch locations out in Miami, the decision to stay with them would have been made a lot easier. So that is one example, but that's the thing that I keep coming back to is how can I leverage what Urban FT has become to enable these community-based institutions, both banks and credit unions, to retain those customers so that in 2018, in 2019, when the next Mark Kilpatrick or individual wants to leave Stevenson or a similar town to head off to a big city, they aren't faced with that same question. They can be retained because the solution that's being delivered is one that keeps them. So I love how this has come full circle for me, and supporting these small FIs to overcome challenges like that are what has inspired me and what continues to inspire me.
So here we are with Urban FT in 2018. So for everyone listening, can you just offer an overview of exactly what Urban FT is and what problems in the market Urban FT is solving, just to help people visualize what you guys do?
Yeah, absolutely. So at the most distilled sense, Urban FT is a leading provider, as I said before, of digital banking solutions. And at our core, we have a digital banking platform. That platform is powering over 700 clients today, and 650 of those are small to medium-sized banks and credit unions. which really sit within our sweet spot. That actually accounts for, and we're really proud of this, what is 10% of the US-based market that sits at 20 billion in assets or less. So, I mean, that is a really good chunk, and we're really proud of being able to have achieved that to this date. Today, our platform for those clients is processing over 3 billion in annualized transactions, which is another milestone we've been really excited about. Even though we primarily service banks and credit unions under 20 billion in assets, our sweet spot really sits in that 50 million to 5 billion in assets. And so most of our, I'd say that probably 80 to 85% of our clients sit within that range. To give some perspective to that, most of the banks and credit unions we're working with only have a handful of branches. The beauty of our solution, though, and how our platform has been configured is that we are able to actually deliver pre-configured solutions that are built, and we kind of stay away from using the term turnkey, but we have made them as streamlined as possible so that they're quick to market and they can be deployed for banks and credit unions at a low cost. In addition to that, we have standardized each of our services so that we are able to deploy one-off services through our digital marketplace. A couple of tangible examples, just to kind of bring this back, is we can deploy end-to-end digital banking applications. We can do things like payment cards and payment processing. We can deploy individual services like remote deposit capture for institutions, or bill pay, peer-to-peer, things of that nature. More recently, we're really looking at ourselves as a core FinTech provider, and we're trying to wrap around the legacy systems that really our banks and credit unions are at the mercy of and provide them with an overall and enhanced service. We're not making them migrate away from that, but we're saying keep your core systems. We will be the platform that wraps around that and delivers an exceptional digital experience for you. So, that's the primary focus of what we're doing today, Neil. We do have some niche business cases that really sit outside of the financial services industry, and that's where we're doing some pretty bespoke and interesting things around insurance and a lot of things within the wireless space. And so it's awesome that our platform has allowed us to kind of move away, in some cases, away from the financial services industry and provide payment card and digital banking experiences for brands that otherwise wouldn't have those capabilities. So we're doing quite a bit of things.
When I was researching you guys, I also came across that I think I read that you believe that it's critical that entrepreneurs understand the value of being seen more than just a vendor. In fact, they should actually be seen as a partner in their success. I mean, can you expand on that?
Yeah, I absolutely can. And I think one of the things that's really differentiated us is how we partner with each of these customers. And that's everything down to the smallest bank or credit union that we might have up to the largest, which would be a number of kind of top 10 bank and credit unions here in the U.S. We have made an effort to really build out our customer success program. And we do a couple of things to support our clients. One of them is we actually assign, after deployment, a dedicated customer success manager. That ensures that they have the access and the support that they need. In addition to that, we run a handful of training programs and have produced materials that can support the frontline staff for each of these institutions so that they can speak comfortably and intelligently around the solutions. We do a handful of things around the marketing services that we're also providing. So we're providing turnkey print and digital marketing materials, and also doing some really kind of unique out-of-the-box social programs and campaigns that these clients can leverage. So all in all, those are a couple of things that we've done to really ensure the success of these clients.
And something else that you've been doing to ensure the success of both your company and your clients is, I think, in the last 12 months alone, you've acquired a number of companies, one being iPass. So how does that fit into the bigger picture at Urban FT and where you're heading in the future? Yeah,
so we have done a number of acquisitions, and I think in the last 18 months, the best way to put it is that there actually are three, and all of them were structured a little bit differently. Yeah. But the first two, you're right. The first is iParse. We've also done an asset acquisition of a company by the name of Agility Money. So in that case, we acquired a certain set of the assets from that institution, but not necessarily the legal entity. And then the third company is CFC Technology. Each of these delivered a mix of interesting technology. We've pulled in a mix of the employees from each of those institutions, and then we've also pulled in some interesting clients as well. So, what that's really done for the bigger picture for us is provided us with some interesting technology that we've been able to plug into our existing platform. It's really primed us for some interesting cross-selling opportunities where, a client may be using one of our services, but we're able to really now go and deliver a full end-to-end solution and consolidate some of the pain points that they're having from fragmentation. It's allowed us to expand on our partnerships and really the depth of some of those existing relationships. And it's provided us with what is now a consolidated distribution channel that really is a significant percentage of the US-based FIs to provide an end-to-end solution. And we're really excited about that.
So we've talked about the technology here that you're using, and I think that's going to be incredibly interesting to a lot of people listening, both consumers and business leaders. But can you tell me a little bit more about how Urban FT can actually simplify the process of designing, building and delivering digital banking solutions, or equally minimising the cost of accelerating speed to market?
Absolutely, yeah. So we've really taken and you've heard me say this a couple of times, a turnkey approach. And again, we've kind of termed that as pre-configured, but at the end of the day, it's how can we deliver an exceptional end user solution, whether it be for consumers or businesses, and do that in a turnkey fashion. And so that's really been the challenge that we've been faced with. And many times we're one level removed from who the actual end user is. And so in many cases, we've had to really dig down. We've had to focus on our usability testing, the research we're doing on the market, and really working towards limiting the complexity of our solutions, as well as consolidating our service vendors without actually making or adding more challenges into the process. And the beauty of it is that I think what the team, the product team, and ultimately our technology team have been able to deliver is a solution that isn't confined by being a white label solution. We don't have a plain vanilla solution. We've gone out and we've built a best in breed turnkey solution that is replicatable at speed and allows for our clients to get to market quickly and at a low cost. One of the things I might highlight is that we've followed, and in particular, our UI UX team has followed an atomic design approach, which really allows for a modular approach and a building block system for each of our solutions so that we have one consistent front end layer, and all of our standard solutions and many of our custom solutions are pulling from that standardized front end framework. And so that consistency layer has been really helpful to deploying front end UX solutions much quicker. We already talked about the customer success component. That has certainly played a role in the success of these programs and enabling and supporting these smaller institutions to be successful. The last thing I might mention is that because of the streamlined processes that we have, we've been able to really reduce the time to market so that we can get most clients to market in 60 to 90 days from the time that their contract is signed. That's not always the case, but that is frequently the case with our standardized solutions.
Fantastic. So I've got to ask then, what's next for Urban FT? Is there anything else you can share with us today about your future plans?
Absolutely. There's a few things going on in the short term that we're really excited about, and here in the next couple of weeks, everybody should keep an eye out for. We are repositioning the way in which we talk about the business and the platform, and as I said, that's really along the lines of being a core FinTech provider and the most capable core FinTech provider. We've also rebranded the business, so that's something people should keep an eye out for, and will be released within the next couple of weeks. Lastly, kind of a little further out in the future, this front-end framework that I was just explaining, we have the next release of that coming out. So we'll be really excited to be deploying that to our client base, and hopefully if there's any listeners out there that would be with one of those institutions, it will deliver a very positive experience for them. And the last thing is, from a product standpoint, in Q1 of next year, we will be releasing a turnkey agent bank program called Community Access, which is a bundle of consumer and commercial prepaid products with a corresponding digital banking experience. And that will really expand the market reach of a lot of our customers and allow them to win and retain a lot of the customers that otherwise they aren't able to today. So we're really, really excited about that.
Well, speaking of the listeners, before I do let you go, could you just remind them of where they can find you guys online, or maybe even reach out and contact a member of your team if they've got any questions after listening to us today?
Yeah, absolutely. Personally, you can reach me at Twitter and Instagram at Mark Ryan Design. That's my handle. And then for Urban FT, you can find us online at urbanft.com. And you can always reach out to our general inquiry inbox at contact@urbanft.com.
Fantastic. Well, a huge thank you for taking the time to come on and share your great story. You've been on an incredible journey, and I don't know how you've managed to squeeze time into your busy schedule to talk to me today, but I really do appreciate you taking that time and sharing that story, and I'd love to get you back on next year and find out how you're getting on and hearing more about the next chapter in your story. So thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thank you so much, Neil. I would love that, and I appreciate your time as well.
Wow, what a great story. If there are any younger listeners tuning in today that are currently feeling a little lost and unsure of what to do next or what career path to choose, I hope you take inspiration from Mark's story, because he went from criminology to psychology, graphic design to where he is today. And I do think we put too much pressure on kids to know exactly what they want to do at such a young age. But exploring and finding your own path should help you find your way to success too. As long as you learn from your mistakes, not repeat them, of course. But that's a whole other episode. So the story of Mark Kilpatrick being raised in Stevenson, Washington, a community of approximately 1,500 residents, nestled on that northern bank of the Columbia River, is something that really resonated with me. I could almost smell the authenticity of his story. And Mark still fondly remembers opening his first checking account at that Riverview Community Bank. So it's fascinating how, when you look back and join up the dots, how much of our past shapes who we are today. And years later, of course, sitting in the financial district of Manhattan in a sleek office overlooking the East River, Mark is now the co-founder and the chief product officer at Urban FT. But Mark's mission is to empower the little guys, reminiscent of that Riverview Community Bank. And these businesses are the underdogs of the finance space. And these are just a few reasons why I love Mark's story, not to mention how he's taken his passion for drafting beautiful images, stories and interfaces in graphic design and the linchpin in Urban FT's mission by taking a renegade-style approach to product development. So everything he's experienced has led to this strategic risk-taking and a passion for radical design have all been the recipe for his success in his career. And I suspect it's also going to be a key element for the advancement of one of the most progressive FinTech brands today. But hey, they were my takeaways. What are yours? As always, email me techblogwriter.co.uk, tweet me at Neil C. Hughes, or drop by my website techblogwriter.co.uk. Put a / and podcast on the end of it, and you can send me a virtual voicemail or just look at the pictures of the guests and links to all their social channels. The choice is yours. But I'm afraid we're out of time today. I am going to be back tomorrow. I'm not sure who we're going to have for you, but I promise you it will be an interesting guest with a fantastic story. So a big thank you for tuning in. And until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thanks for listening to the Tech Blog Writer Podcast. Until next time, remember, technology is best when it brings people together.